Will Howard Hospital, Power, Betrayal, and Redemption by James Sinclair. Prologue. A storm is brewing. The air inside Will Howard Hospital felt heavy, almost suffocating. Beneath the hum of medical equipment and the sterile scent of disinfectant, tension simmered just below the surface. Alexander Reid, the hospital's ambitious chief information officer, CIO, stood in the executive conference room, his gaze fixed on the sprawling city of Shreveport, Louisiana, beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. To the untrained eye, Will Howard Hospital was thriving. State-of-the-art technology, an expanded emergency department, and an impressive reputation for patient care. But Alexander knew the truth. "It's all built on lies," he murmured, his jaw clenched as he adjusted his tie. For months, Alexander had been promising revolutionary changes, a seamless electronic health record, EHR system that would connect every department, optimize workflows, and elevate the hospital to new heights. But behind closed doors, the system was barely functional. Glitches plagued the infrastructure, timelines were slipping, and patient care was suffering. Yet Alexander had managed to keep the board and the hospital's CEO, Dr. Thibodeau, convinced that everything was under control. "They trust me," Alexander whispered, a flicker of a smile tugging at his lips. "And that's their biggest mistake." But Alexander wasn't the only one with an agenda. Dana Johnson, a driven and ruthless nurse, had her own plans. Her ambition stretched far beyond her current role. She wanted to be Chief Nursing Officer, CNO, and she was willing to do whatever it took to get there. "If they won't give me what I deserve," Dana's voice echoed softly in her mind as she tightened her grip on her clipboard, "I'll take it." And then there was Angel McWilliams, a calculating powerhouse who led the hospital's administration with an iron grip. She reported directly to Dr. Thibodeau and had a pulse on every department, every move, and every misstep. But Angel wasn't just watching, she was waiting. When Alexander falls, Angel's lips curled into a knowing smile as she reviewed her latest report. "I'll be ready." In the shadows, alliances were being forged, secrets whispered, and power was shifting. Jeffery McDaniels, director of the emergency department and a man of unshakable integrity, had begun to notice the cracks in the system and in Alexander's promises. But Jeffrey's quest for the truth would lead him down a dangerous path. "If I expose this," Jeffrey murmured as he reviewed another failed system report, "it might cost me everything." As the hospital's walls held the weight of hidden agendas and fragile alliances, an inevitable storm was brewing, a collision of ambition, betrayal, and corruption that threatened to tear Will Howard Hospital apart. And when the dust settled, only one would emerge victorious. Chapter 1. The Illusion of Control. Will Howard Hospital stood tall in the heart of Shreveport, Louisiana. To the public, it was a symbol of healthcare excellence. But behind its polished facade, chaos was brewing, chaos that would soon engulf the institution and its leadership. Alexander Reid adjusted his tie as he walked into the executive conference room, the air thick with anticipation. Today, he was presenting his grand vision, a seamless electronic health record, EHR system that would revolutionize patient care and bring the hospital into the future. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander began, flashing his signature confident smile, "what we're embarking on isn't just an upgrade, it's a transformation. Imagine a system where every patient record is at your fingertips, seamless workflows, and reduced errors. This is the future of Will Howard Hospital, and I assure you we're on the brink of making it a reality." The board members nodded, some with enthusiasm, others with skepticism. Dr. Thibodeau, the CEO, leaned forward, his piercing eyes locked on Alexander. "And the timeline, Alexander? How soon can we expect results?" 6 months, tops." Alexander lied without blinking. He knew that meeting that deadline was impossible, but the promise secured him control over the project and, more importantly, kept him in the CEO's good graces. Across the table, Angel McWilliams watched with quiet interest. As the head of the administration department, she had been in the game long enough to recognize when someone was selling a dream. Alexander was overpromising, and she knew it. But she said nothing, not yet. Her time would come. In the bustling hallways outside the conference room, Dana Johnson strode through with purpose. A seasoned nurse, with years of experience, Dana wasn't content with her current position. She wanted more, much more. If this EHR rollout goes smoothly, I'll be a shoo-in for CNO, Dana murmured under her breath, her mind already calculating the steps needed to climb the corporate ladder. But she needed allies. She found one in Cray George, an IT specialist who worked long hours to keep the hospital's aging systems functioning. Cray was reliable, competent, and most importantly, smitten with Dana. Their secret relationship had been a carefully guarded secret, but Dana knew how to leverage it when necessary. Cray, Dana whispered later that afternoon as they stood in the dimly lit IT control room, I need you to keep a close eye on Alexander's team. Make sure everything stays on track. Cray hesitated, his brow furrowed. You think Alexander's going to mess this up? Dana's smile was laced with calculated charm. I think we need to be ready in case he does. Alexander's promises reverberated through the hospital, raising expectations to dangerous heights. But behind the scenes, cracks were already forming. The IT department was stretched thin, Cray's team was working around the clock, and resources were being pulled from critical areas to support the project. As weeks passed, small failures began to appear. Glitches in scheduling, lost patient records, and communication breakdowns between departments. Alexander brushed these off, assuring everyone that the system would stabilize, but he knew the truth. He was losing control. In her office, Angel McWilliams meticulously documented every misstep. Every failure, every delay, every whispered complaint made its way into her files. Angel was playing a long game, and Alexander's failure was the key to her resurgence. Patience, she murmured to herself, eyes gleaming. His time will come. Jeffery McDaniels, director of the emergency department, wasn't fooled by Alexander's charm. A man of unwavering integrity, Jeffrey had seen the chaos firsthand. Alexander, Jeffrey said, cornering him after a chaotic staff meeting. We're losing control. You need to listen to the consultants. They can help. Alexander cut him off with a cold smile. Relax, Jeff, I've got this under control. But Jeffrey wasn't convinced, and he wasn't about to stand by and watch the hospital crumble. As the sun set over Will Howard Hospital, the wheels of ambition, betrayal, and deceptions had already been set in motion. Alexander Reid had built his empire on lies and promises, but cracks were beginning to show, and those who had been watching, waiting, were ready to strike. The illusion of control was slipping, and it was only a matter of time before everything unraveled. Chapter 2, Beneath the Surface. The shimmering facade of Will Howard Hospital gave the illusion of stability and progress. But beneath the surface, alliances were forming, secrets were being exchanged, and ambitions were quietly festering. Angel McWilliams sat in her office, meticulously reviewing the latest EHR progress report. The numbers didn't lie. System delays, connectivity issues, and mounting staff frustrations painted a grim picture. Alexander Reid's promises were unraveling faster than he could cover them up. Angel tapped her pen rhythmically against her desk, a knowing smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Patience, she murmured softly, her eyes narrowing as she envisioned her path back to power. She had been CEO before, at Garcia Medical Center in New Orleans, and she wasn't about to let a man like Alexander Reid stand in her way. Angel had a plan. She had spent months quietly positioning herself as the hospital's savior, documenting Alexander's failures, and cultivating allies within the board. Dr. Thibodeau valued results, and Angel was making sure that when the time came, she would be the one offering solutions. Alexander's days are numbered, she whispered, a glimmer of satisfaction flickering in her eyes. Her biggest advantage? Alexander had no idea she was coming for him. Meanwhile, Alexander Reid was feeling the pressure. The EHR implementation was spiraling out of control, and cracks in the system were becoming impossible to ignore. Nurses were complaining, patient care was slowing, and errors were multiplying. But Alexander was a master manipulator. Every time a department raised concerns, he deflected, blaming the consultants, the IT team, or anyone else who could be a scapegoat. "Cray," Alexander barked as he stormed into the IT control room, "why is the scheduling module still crashing?" Cray George looked up from his terminal, eyes bloodshot from too many sleepless nights. "We're doing everything we can, Alexander, but the system's overloaded and the resources we need—" "Figure it out," Alexander snapped, cutting him off. "I don't care how, just make sure it works." Cray watched Alexander storm out, his jaw clenched. He had done everything possible to keep the system afloat, but Alexander's unrealistic timelines and constant shifting of resources were making it impossible. Later that evening, Cray found solace in familiar arms. Dana Johnson traced her fingers along his jawline, her expression equal parts concerned and determined. "Alexander's riding you hard, isn't he?" she whispered, her lips brushing against his ear. Cray sighed, pulling her closer. "It's a mess, Dana. I don't know how much longer I can keep this together." Dana's eyes gleamed with something deeper than concern, ambition. "Cray," she purred softly, running her fingers through his hair, "you're smarter than Alexander. You could lead that department if he crashes and burns." Her words lingered, planting a dangerous seed in Cray's mind. Dana wasn't just offering comfort. She was planting ideas, steering him toward a future where she could leverage his position for her own gain. Jeffery McDaniels had been watching from the sidelines. As director of the emergency department, Jeffery had a front-row seat to the chaos unfolding. He didn't trust Alexander, never had. But now, the stakes were too high to stay silent. After a particularly disastrous system outage that delayed emergency surgeries, Jeffery requested a private meeting with Dr. Thibodeau. "Doc, we've got a problem," Jeffery began, his voice calm but firm. "This EHR rollout isn't just failing, it's putting lives at risk." Dr. Thibodeau leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "I know, Jeffery, but what are you suggesting?" Jeffery hesitated, knowing full well the consequences of what he was about to say. "Bring the consultants back in, let them assess the situation properly. If we don't get this under control—" Dr. Thibodeau's expression hardened. "You think Alexander's the problem?" Jeffery met his gaze. "I know he is." Jeffrey's words weighed heavily on Dr. Thibodeau's mind. He had trusted Alexander to lead this project, but the mounting evidence was impossible to ignore. Angel had been whispering in his ear for weeks, warning him about Alexander's mismanagement. Now, Jeffrey's concerns were echoing those whispers. "Maybe it's time for a change," Dr. Thibodeau murmured to himself as he stared out of his office window, the lights of Shreveport twinkling in the distance. Angel wasn't wasting any time. She had been feeding carefully curated information to the board, highlighting Alexander's failures while subtly suggesting that she could fix what was broken. Her moment was coming, and when it did, she would be ready. But beneath the surface, other forces were shifting. Dana's ambition, Cray's growing disillusionment, and Jeffrey's desire for justice were converging into a perfect storm. The illusion of control was slipping, and when it shattered, the fallout would be catastrophic. Chapter 3, Promises and Betrayals. The sun barely rose over Shreveport before the chaos of Will Howard Hospital started brewing. Emails flooded inboxes, patient complaints were mounting, and Alexander Reid's carefully constructed world was beginning to crack. Alexander Reid paced the length of his office, his mind racing. The EHR system was still unstable, and the pressure was mounting. The board was starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Dr. Thibodeau was no longer smiling during their meetings, and worse, Angel McWilliams was growing bolder in her critiques. Alexander's phone buzzed, a message from Dr. Thibodeau. "Alexander, I need a full status update on the EHR progress by end of day, no excuses." Alexander gritted his teeth. He had promised results, but the system was nowhere near ready. He couldn't afford to show weakness now. Time to get creative, he murmured under his breath. Alexander's solution? Promise more. If he could convince the board that a new optimization phase would fix the bugs, he could buy himself a few more months. He scheduled a meeting with the department heads, intending to sell them on his new plan. We've identified the gaps, Alexander said confidently as he stood before them. The optimization phase will address every outstanding issue. We're looking at full functionality within 90 days. Jeffery McDaniels narrowed his eyes, arms crossed. You said that 3 months ago, Alexander. Alexander's smile never wavered. I know, Jeff, but this time we've got the right team and the right focus. Jeffrey didn't buy it, and neither did Angel McWilliams, who sat silently at the back of the room, her expression unreadable. But Dana Johnson, ever the opportunist, was quick to offer support. Alexander's right, Dana chimed in, her tone silky smooth. With the right resources, we can turn this around. We all want this to succeed, don't we? Her words were carefully calculated. She wasn't just supporting Alexander. She was ensuring that when the dust settled, she would be on the winning side. Later that evening, Dana Johnson and Cray George met in the quiet confines of the IT control room. The glow of the monitors cast shadows across their faces as they spoke in hushed tones. Alexander's making promises he can't keep, Cray muttered, his voice filled with frustration. We're holding this system together with duct tape and prayers. Dana leaned in closer, her fingers brushing lightly against Cray's hand. And that's why we need to be smart, Cray. When this falls apart, and it will, we need to be in a position to pick up the pieces. Cray's eyes searched hers, a mixture of doubt and longing. What are you suggesting? Cover for him for now, Dana whispered, her lips dangerously close to his ear. But be ready, when he falls, I'll need you to be on my side. Cray hesitated, but Dana's influence was too strong. He nodded slowly, sealing a pact that would soon spiral out of control. Angel McWilliams was always watching. From her corner office, she had eyes and ears everywhere. The whispers of discontent, the quiet grumbles from the IT team, and the growing frustration among the nurses. All of it was ammunition. Angel had positioned herself perfectly. She fed carefully curated information to Dr. Thibodeau, highlighting Alexander's missteps while subtly positioning herself as the hospital's savior. Dr. Thibodeau, Angel said smoothly during one of their private meetings, I'm worried about the EHR project. The staff is demoralized, and departments are working in silos. We need stronger leadership to steer this in the right direction. Dr. Thibodeau's brow furrowed. You're suggesting we make a change? Angel smiled, but there was no warmth behind it. I'm saying we need to be prepared, in case Alexander can't deliver. Her words hung in the air, planting the seeds of doubt where they needed to grow. Jeffery McDaniels couldn't stand by any longer. After another system crash that delayed emergency procedures, he confronted Alexander directly. Alexander, this is getting out of hand, Jeffery said, his voice low but filled with restrained fury. People's lives are at risk. Alexander didn't flinch. I've got it under control, Jeff. Don't worry. Control, Jeffrey's voice hardened. You're losing control, Alexander, and if you won't fix this, I'll go to the board myself. Alexander's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. Careful, Jeff. You don't want to overstep. But Jeffrey wasn't backing down. His loyalty was to the patients, not to Alexander's ego. Unbeknownst to Jeffrey, Alexander had already begun laying the groundwork to protect himself. Working closely with Dr. Thibodeau, he spun a narrative that painted Jeffrey as an obstacle, someone who resisted change and was holding back progress. Alexander's lies worked. Slowly but surely, Dr. Thibodeau's trust in Jeffrey began to waver. As the hospital teetered on the edge of chaos, the promises Alexander had made were about to come crashing down. Cray was losing control of the system, Dana was plotting her next move, and Angel was poised to take advantage of the inevitable collapse. And Jeffrey, he was running out of time. And when it arrived, no one would be safe. Chapter 4, the consultants arrived. The first hint of trouble came with an email. Subject, External review, EHR system implementation. To Will Howard Hospital Leadership Team. From Dr. Thibodeau. Team, given the recent challenges with the EHR rollout, I've engaged an external consulting firm to assess the situation and provide recommendations. They'll be on site this week. Full cooperation is expected. Regards, Doctor. Thibodeau double asterisk. Alexander Reid's jaw clenched as he read the message. Consultants. This was the beginning of the end if he wasn't careful. Damn it, Alexander muttered under his breath, running a hand through his graying hair. He knew what consultants meant: fresh eyes, unbiased analysis, and the potential to expose everything he had been hiding. He wouldn't let that happen. By midweek, the consulting team arrived. 3 polished professionals from Hawthorne Consulting, a firm known for turning failing hospitals around. Marcus Whitman, the lead consultant, was a man who commanded attention with his calm demeanor and laser-sharp focus. He had seen it all: promises gone unfulfilled, budgets mismanaged, and leaders who would do anything to save face. His partners, Linda Chavez and Derek Owens, were equally formidable, each with decades of experience in healthcare IT and operational management. They wasted no time. We'll need full access to the system logs, department reports, and direct feedback from the staff, Marcus said as he addressed the leadership team. His eyes landed on Alexander, who forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Of course, Alexander said smoothly, masking his panic. We're here to collaborate. But in his mind, Alexander was already plotting ways to undermine their efforts. Alexander's strategy was simple: feed the consultants just enough information to keep them occupied, while subtly redirecting them away from the most damaging issues. He assigned Cray George to liaison with the consultants, knowing Cray would follow his lead. Make sure they only see what we want them to see, Alexander instructed Cray in a hushed tone. No need to air all our dirty laundry. Cray hesitated, his conscience warring with his loyalty to Dana and, by extension, to Alexander. But the weight of his complicity kept him silent. I'll take care of it, Cray mumbled, feeling the noose tighten around his neck. While Alexander schemed, Angel McWilliams had her own plans. Welcome to Will Howard, Angel greeted Marcus and his team with a warm but calculated smile. If there's anything you need, I'm here to assist. Angel's charm wasn't just hospitality, it was strategy. She knew the consultants would uncover the chaos, and she wanted to ensure they had every piece of incriminating evidence pointing toward Alexander. We've had challenges, Angel said diplomatically, her words carefully chosen. The staff has done their best, but they've been operating under difficult circumstances. Marcus raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He had dealt with enough corporate infighting to recognize when someone was positioning themselves for a takeover. The weight on Cray George's shoulders was becoming unbearable. He had been covering for Alexander, fixing glitches behind the scenes, and keeping the consultants in the dark. But the more time he spent with Marcus and his team, the harder it became to ignore the truth. They're asking the right questions, Cray confided to Dana Johnson after a long day of interviews and system reviews. They're going to find out, Dana. It's just a matter of time. Dana's expression hardened. Then we need to be ready. We can't let them take us down with Alexander. Her words struck a nerve. Cray wasn't sure where his loyalty lay anymore. His heart was with Dana, but his conscience was screaming at him to do the right thing. While Cray wrestled with his conscience, Jeffery McDaniels saw an opportunity. Marcus and his team had requested to meet with frontline staff to get a better sense of the real situation, and Jeffery was ready to tell the truth. Marcus, Jeffery said, shaking the consultant's hand firmly. I'm glad you're here. You've got a lot to uncover. Over the next hour, Jeffery laid it all out: the missed deadlines, the system crashes, the near disasters in the ER, and Alexander's constant deflection of blame. We can't afford to get this wrong, Jeffery said, his voice steady. If you don't get to the root of this, people will die. As the consultants pieced together the puzzle, the picture became clear. Alexander's strategy of half-truths and misdirection was starting to unravel. The data didn't lie: system errors, missed timelines, and a culture of fear and incompetence. "We're seeing systemic issues," Marcus said during a private debrief with Dr. Thibodeau, "and they all point to leadership." Dr. Thibodeau's expression was grim. He had given Alexander every opportunity to succeed, but the evidence was damning. "Prepare your final report," Dr. Thibodeau said quietly. "I'll take it from there." Sensing the walls closing in, Alexander knew he needed a scapegoat. His mind raced through possibilities before landing on an obvious target. "Thibodeau's losing faith in Jeff," Alexander told Dr. Thibodeau in a private meeting. "He's undermining the project. Maybe it's time to make a change." It was a desperate, calculated move, but Alexander was out of options. And if Jeffrey was taken down, there'd be one less person standing in his way. As the consultants finalized their report, the pieces were falling into place. Angel was ready to make her move. Cray was standing at a moral crossroads. Dana was preparing to jump ship if necessary. And Jeffrey was in Alexander's crosshairs. The storm was coming, and when it hit, Will Howard Hospital would never be the same. Chapter 5, Affairs, Ambition, and Chaos. The cracks in Will Howard Hospital were becoming impossible to ignore. Staff morale was at an all-time low, the EHR system was still a mess, and tensions between key players were reaching a boiling point. But Dana Johnson wasn't concerned with the chaos around her. She was focused on one thing, securing her future as chief nursing officer, and she was willing to do whatever it took to get there. Late one evening, Dana met Cray George in the dimly lit storage room near the IT wing. Their secret affair had intensified over the last few weeks, fueled by the mounting pressure at work. "Alexander's losing control," Cray murmured, his hands resting lightly on Dana's waist. Dana's eyes narrowed. "Good, that means it's time for us to make our move." "Move how?" Cray asked, uncertainty clouding his expression. "Alexander's going to crash and burn," Dana whispered, her lips brushing against his ear. "When that happens, you'll be in the perfect position to take over the IT department." Cray's brow furrowed. "And what about you?" Dana's smile was icy. "I'll be CNO before this is over, and together, we'll control this place." Alexander Reid was growing increasingly paranoid. The consultants were closing in, and Dr. Thibodeau's faith in him was fading fast. Alexander knew that if the final report didn't go his way, his career was over. To protect himself, Alexander ramped up his manipulation. He continued feeding Dr. Thibodeau misinformation, painting Jeffery McDaniels as the real problem. "He's been undermining the project from the beginning," Alexander insisted during a closed-door meeting. "If we want to get this system back on track, we need to clean house." Dr. Thibodeau's expression was unreadable, but the seed of doubt had been planted. While Alexander fought to maintain his grip on the hospital, Angel McWilliams was preparing for her final move. Her strategy was simple: let Alexander dig his own grave, while positioning herself as the only viable replacement. She had spent weeks cultivating allies on the board, feeding them information that painted her as the logical choice to clean up Alexander's mess. "Alexander's time is running out," Angel murmured to herself, reviewing the latest reports. "And when it does, I'll be ready." Cray was drowning in guilt. Every lie he told the consultants, every corner he cut to protect Alexander, and every manipulation Dana whispered into his ear was weighing on him. Late at night, alone in the IT control room, Cray stared at the system logs. The evidence of Alexander's incompetence was right in front of him. He could expose it. He could end this nightmare. But if he did, he'd lose Dana. "Damn it," Cray muttered, running a hand through his hair. He was running out of time. Jeffery McDaniels knew the walls were closing in. Alexander's lies were poisoning Dr. Thibodeau's perception of him, and if he didn't act soon, he'd be out of a job. And worse, the hospital would be left in chaos. "I can't let this happen," Jeffrey murmured as he stared at the mountain of evidence he had compiled. But taking down Alexander meant risking everything. As the hospital edged closer to collapse, everyone was making their final moves. Dana was pulling Cray deeper into her web. Alexander was tightening his grip on a crumbling empire. Angel was poised to strike, And Jeffrey was preparing for one last desperate attempt to expose the truth. The storm was no longer coming. It was here. Chapter 6, The Reckoning. The day of reckoning had arrived. Marcus Whitman and his team from Hawthorne Consulting had completed their evaluation of the EHR rollout, and the findings were damning. The system was unstable, poorly managed, and riddled with inefficiencies. And at the center of it all, Alexander Reid. The conference room was packed. Dr. Thibodeau sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable, as Marcus began the presentation. The data speaks for itself, Marcus said calmly, flipping through slide after slide of evidence. Missed deadlines, system crashes, poor oversight, and consistent misdirection from leadership. Alexander's face grew paler with each passing minute. Based on our analysis, Marcus continued, the primary source of these failures points directly to the office of the CIO. A heavy silence fell over the room. Angel McWilliams sat quietly, her expression carefully neutral, but inside she was reveling in the moment. The fall of Alexander Reid was imminent. Alexander wasn't going down without a fight. He had one last card to play, and he was ready to use it. I disagree with these findings, Alexander interjected, his voice calm but laced with desperation. The system's failures aren't due to leadership. They're due to resistance from certain departments. His eyes landed squarely on Jeffery McDaniels. Jeffrey has been undermining this project from the beginning, Alexander said smoothly. If we want to move forward, we need to remove the obstacles. Dr. Thibodeau's expression darkened, but before he could respond, Jeffrey spoke up. I've had enough of this, Jeffrey said, standing up and locking eyes with Alexander. I've watched you manipulate, deflect, and lie to protect yourself, Alexander, and I'm not going to let you take me down with you. Jeffrey pulled out a flash drive and placed it on the table. This contains every communication, every system report, and every warning that was ignored. It paints a clear picture of who's responsible. The room was deathly silent as Dr. Thibodeau picked up the drive. Let's see what's really going on, Dr. Thibodeau said, his voice cold. In the corner, Craig George sat frozen. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched the drama unfold. The truth was about to come out, and with it, every lie he had told to protect Alexander. Cray, Dana's voice was a whisper, her eyes pleading, do something. But Cray was done. He couldn't keep lying, not anymore. I can't, Cray muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. It's over. As Dr. Thibodeau reviewed the contents of the flash drive, his expression hardened. Alexander, he said, his tone laced with finality, we're done here. Alexander's face went pale. He opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. Effective immediately, Doctor. Thibodeau continued, you are relieved of your duties. Alexander's fall from grace was swift and merciless. Security escorted him out of the building as the weight of his lies came crashing down. As Alexander's reign ended, the hospital staff breathed a collective sigh of relief. But the damage had been done, and now it was time to pick up the pieces. Angel McWilliams stepped forward, her moment finally here. Dr. Thibodeau, Angel said smoothly, I'd be honored to assist with the transition. We need strong leadership to move forward. Dr. Thibodeau nodded slowly. We'll talk. But even as Alexander Reid was escorted out of Will Howard Hospital, the seeds of chaos he had planted were far from gone. Dana's ambitions were still burning, Cray's conscience was still heavy. And Jeffrey, he wasn't done fighting. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. Chapter 7, The Fall of Alexander Reid. Alexander Reid was gone. His office was empty, his nameplate removed, and yet his shadow still lingered over Will Howard Hospital like a storm cloud refusing to dissipate. Angel McWilliams wasted no time. With Alexander out of the picture, she swooped in to fill the power vacuum. Dr. Thibodeau, Angel said in her calm, confident tone, we need to stabilize the situation immediately. Staff morale is low, and we can't afford any more missteps. Dr. Thibodeau, weary from the ordeal, nodded slowly. What do you suggest? Let me take charge of the transition, Angel replied smoothly. We need to implement corrective measures and restore confidence in leadership. Dr. Thibodeau studied her for a moment, then gave a reluctant nod. Do what you need to do, Angel. Her smile was subtle, but her mind was already racing with plans. She wasn't just cleaning up Alexander's mess, she was positioning herself for the top. While Angel solidified her control, Dana Johnson was plotting her next move. Alexander's out, Dana murmured to Cray George as they met in the quiet corners of the IT control room. That means new opportunities. We can still make this work. Cray's eyes were clouded with doubt. Dana, I don't know. Everything's a mess. Maybe it's time to cut our losses. Dana's expression hardened. We didn't come this far to back down now. Her grip on Cray's arm tightened. If Angel takes over completely, we'll be left with nothing. But if we move now, we can still come out on top. Cray's heart pounded. He was trapped between his feelings for Dana and the guilt gnawing at him from the lies he had told. Just trust me, Dana whispered, her voice softer now. We're so close. Jeffery McDaniels had won the battle against Alexander, but the war was far from over. The hospital was still in disarray, and there were too many loose ends. Jeffery, Dr. Thibodeau said, calling him into his office, I want you to oversee the implementation of the corrective measures recommended by the consultants. Jeffery blinked, surprised. You want me to lead the transition? You've been the most vocal about fixing this mess, Dr. Thibodeau said, his tone serious. I trust you to do what's right. Jeffery nodded, determination lighting his eyes. I won't let you down. But Jeffery wasn't just focused on fixing the hospital. He had another goal, exposing the rest of the corruption. Cray was unraveling. The lies, the manipulation, the deceit. It was all crashing down on him. Cray, Dana whispered late one night, her hands gently cupping his face. You have to hold it together. We're almost there. But Cray wasn't sure he could. I don't know if I can keep doing this, Cray murmured, his voice breaking. I'm tired, Dana. So damn tired. Dana's eyes flashed with something dangerous. Then don't quit on me now. But Cray was starting to see the truth. Dana wasn't in this for them. She was in it for herself. As Angel consolidated power, Dana schemed in the shadows, and Jeffery prepared for the fight ahead. The stage was set for the next battle. Alexander Reid's fall had created a power vacuum, and everyone was fighting to fill it. Chapter 8, Allies and Enemies. The dust from Alexander Reid's downfall had barely settled, but the power struggle at Will Howard Hospital was far from over. New alliances were forming, while old enemies plotted in the shadows. Angel McWilliams had emerged as the de facto leader after Alexander's removal, and she was wasting no time consolidating her power. I've scheduled a department-wide meeting, Angel informed Dr. Thibodeau, her tone crisp and professional. We need to reassure the staff that stability is returning. Dr. Thibodeau nodded, his expression tired but relieved. I'm counting on you, Angel. Angel gave a reassuring smile, but inside, she was calculating her next move. With Alexander gone and the consultant's report backing her, she was inching closer to reclaiming a position she had once held. CEO. While Angel was strengthening her grip on the hospital, Dana Johnson was playing a different game. Cray, Dana whispered softly during one of their late-night rendezvous, we're not out of the game yet. Cray's expression was torn. Dana, I'm not sure this is worth it anymore. It's worth everything, Dana said firmly, her fingers trailing down his chest. We've come too far to let Angel win. Dana's new plan was simple. Get close to Angel, gain her trust, and then use that trust to take her down. We can't fight her head on, Dana murmured, but if we play the long game, we can make sure she falls just like Alexander did. Jeffery McDaniels was laser-focused on one thing, exposing the rest of the corruption within the hospital. Alexander Reid was gone, but Jeffery knew the rot went deeper, and he wasn't going to stop until he rooted it all out. Marcus, Jeffery said, meeting with Marcus Whitman from Hawthorne Consulting. I need your help. Marcus raised an eyebrow. I thought the cleanup was underway. It is, Jeffery replied, but I don't think we've seen the full picture. I need access to the records, everything that was hidden during Alexander's tenure. Marcus leaned back, considering. You're walking a dangerous path, Jeffrey. I know, Jeffrey said quietly, but I can't walk away now. Cray George was a man torn between two worlds. His loyalty to Dana had led him down a dark path, but with Alexander gone and the lies exposed, Cray was beginning to question everything. Cray, Angel said softly one afternoon as they crossed paths in the IT corridor, I know things have been difficult, but we're moving in the right direction now. Cray's heart pounded. Angel's words were sincere, but Dana's influence still clung to him like a shadow. I just want to do what's best for the hospital, Cray mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. Angel's eyes narrowed, sensing his inner turmoil. Then make sure you're standing on the right side when the dust settles. The battle lines were being drawn. Angel was cementing her authority. Dana was weaving a web of deceit. Jeffrey was preparing to expose the last vestiges of corruption. And Cray? Cray was standing at a crossroads where one wrong move could destroy everything. The final showdown was coming, and no one was safe. Chapter 9, Revenge and Redemption. The storm that had been brewing at Will Howard Hospital was about to break, and when it did, lives would be changed forever. Dana Johnson had been playing the long game, and now her plan was unfolding perfectly. Angel trusts me, Dana murmured softly to Cray George as they met in the dimly lit IT control room. She thinks I'm on her side. Cray's jaw clenched. And what happens when she finds out you're not? Dana's smile was cold. By the time she realizes it, it'll be too late. Her plan was simple: undermine Angel from the inside, create chaos, and position herself as the savior. But Cray wasn't sure he could keep going along with it. Dana, this is getting dangerous, Cray murmured, his voice tinged with guilt. Maybe we should back off. Dana's eyes flashed with anger. We don't back off, Cray. Not now. We're too close. Jeffery McDaniels had been digging through records for weeks, and what he found was worse than he imagined. Marcus, Jeffrey said, pacing in his office as he spoke to Marcus Whitman over the phone. I found it. Proof that Alexander was funneling hospital funds into private accounts. But it doesn't stop there. Marcus's voice was grave. What else did you find? Connections to Dana and Cray, Jeffrey murmured, his voice heavy with disappointment. They were complicit in covering it up. The weight of betrayal pressed down on Jeffrey. Cray, the man he had trusted, and Dana. Her ambition had consumed her. I can't let this go, Jeffrey said quietly. They need to pay for what they've done. Cray George was unraveling. The lies, the manipulation, the cover-ups, it was all suffocating him, and Dana's relentless ambition was pushing him to the brink. I can't do this anymore, Cray whispered to himself, staring at the system logs that held the truth. This isn't who I am. Cray knew the truth could destroy everything, but keeping it hidden was eating him alive. Angel McWilliams wasn't blind to what was happening. She had suspected Dana's duplicity for weeks, and now she was ready to strike back. Dana thinks she's clever, Angel murmured to Dr. Thibodeau during a private meeting, but she's underestimating me. Angel's plan was precise: expose Dana's manipulations, reveal Cray's complicity, and eliminate both threats in one fell swoop. I'll handle this, Angel said, her voice calm but lethal. Dr. Thibodeau's eyes met hers, a silent acknowledgement that the final battle was near. The confrontation came faster than anyone expected. Jeffery McDaniels cornered Cray in the IT control room, his eyes filled with a mixture of disappointment and anger. Cray, Jeffrey said quietly, tell me the truth. Cray's hands trembled as he met Jeffrey's gaze. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Then fix it, Jeffrey said firmly, before it's too late. Cray's mind was racing. He had a choice to make: continue down the path of lies and betrayal, or finally do the right thing. The next morning, Cray stood before Angel and Doctor Thibodeau, his confession spilling out like a dam breaking. I covered for Alexander, Cray admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. I hid the system errors and manipulated the reports. But Dana, she's been pulling the strings all along. Angel's eyes narrowed. And you're telling us this now because I can't keep living with this, Cray whispered. I want to make it right. It didn't take long for Angel to strike. Dana Johnson was summoned to Dr. Thibodeau's office, where Angel laid out the evidence with surgical precision. Dana, Angel said coldly, your ambition blinded you. And now it's over. Dana's face went pale. She opened her mouth to protest, but the evidence was irrefutable. Effective immediately, Doctor. Thibodeau said, his tone final. Your employment is terminated. As Dana's reign of deceit crumbled, Jeffery and Angel stood ready to lead Will Howard Hospital into a new era. But the battle wasn't over. Because in the shadows, Alexander Reid wasn't done yet. Chapter 10, The Final Power Play. The dust had barely settled after Dana Johnson's spectacular fall from grace, but Will Howard Hospital wasn't out of danger yet. A new storm was brewing, and at the center of it was Alexander Reid. Alexander's return. No one had expected to hear from Alexander Reid again after he was escorted out of the hospital, his reputation in tatters. But Alexander wasn't the type to disappear quietly. Dr. Thibodeau, an email subject read, one morning, let's talk. Dr. Thibodeau's brow furrowed as he read the email. I have information that could jeopardize Will Howard's future. We both know I wasn't the only one with dirty hands. Let's meet. I think we can help each other. Angel McWilliams had clawed her way to the top, but she knew how fragile her position was. If Alexander had information that could compromise her, everything she had worked for would be at risk. He's bluffing, Angel murmured as she paced her office. But a seed of doubt had already taken root. She couldn't afford to take chances. Jeffrey, Angel said softly during a private meeting, I need you to watch Alexander. I don't trust him. Jeffrey's jaw clenched. If he's back, we need to be ready. Jeffery McDaniels wasn't about to let Alexander Reid undo everything they had fixed. He had come too far to let corruption seep back into Will Howard. I'll keep an eye on him, Jeffrey promised. But if he steps out of line, I'm taking him down. Jeffrey's determination was stronger than ever, but Alexander was playing a deeper game. Cray George was a man haunted by his past mistakes. He had been part of the problem for too long, but now he was determined to make things right. Alexander's back, Cray said quietly to Angel, guilt still weighing heavy in his eyes. If he tries anything, I'll stop him. Angel studied him for a moment. I'm counting on you, Cray. For the first time in a long time, Cray felt a flicker of hope. When Alexander Reid finally met with Dr. Thibodeau, the conversation was more dangerous than anyone expected. I know things, Alexander said smoothly, leaning back in his chair. Things that could bring this place to its knees. Dr. Thibodeau's face was stone, but his pulse quickened. What do you want? A chance to fix my reputation, Alexander said, his smile chilling. Give me a consulting role. I'll clean up my mess and keep quiet about what I know. When Angel heard about Alexander's offer, her blood ran cold. He's trying to worm his way back in, Angel hissed to Jeffrey. We can't let that happen. Jeffrey's jaw tightened. Then we take him down, for good. Angel's mind was already calculating her next move. She had come too far to let Alexander threaten her again. The climax came at a high-stakes board meeting where Alexander made his play. I can fix this, Alexander said confidently, addressing the board. I know the system better than anyone. Let me guide the transition. Angel McWilliams stood, her gaze piercing. Alexander, you're not here to fix anything. You're here to protect yourself. The tension in the room was thick. Angel's right, Jeffrey added, his voice firm. Alexander doesn't deserve another chance. We need to move forward without him. Dr. Thibodeau looked around the room, his expression unreadable. The decision is final, Doctor, Thibodeau said quietly, his eyes locking onto Alexander's. Your services are no longer required. Alexander's expression was unreadable, but the defeat was evident in his eyes. Big mistake, Alexander murmured under his breath, but no one was listening. As security escorted him out once again, this time there was no coming back. With Alexander Reid finally gone for good, Will Howard Hospital could begin to heal. But the scars remained. And in the world of hospital politics, one thing was certain: no one stayed on top forever. Chapter 11, New Beginnings or Old Ghosts. With Alexander Reid finally gone and the chaos he had unleashed slowly being brought under control, Will Howard Hospital was beginning to breathe again. But the wounds left behind weren't so easily healed. Angel McWilliams stood at the helm, her calculated moves having secured her the position she had long coveted. Dr. Thibodeau, Angel said confidently as they stood outside his office, the afternoon sun casting a warm glow through the glass. We've turned a corner. The worst is behind us. Dr. Thibodeau gave a weary nod, his eyes reflecting the exhaustion of the months-long battle. I trust you to keep it that way, Angel. But Angel knew that trust was a fragile thing. She had won the war, but maintaining control was another battle altogether. Jeffery McDaniels had emerged from the wreckage with his integrity intact, and now he had a new mission. Jeff, Dr. Thibodeau said during a private meeting, the hospital needs someone who can rebuild trust with the staff. I can't think of anyone better. Jeffrey's heart pounded in his chest. You're asking me to take over as director of operations, Dr. Thibodeau said softly. We need stability, and I know you can deliver that. Jeffrey's mind flashed back to everything he had endured: the betrayal, the lies, the fight to expose the truth, and now, a chance to make things right. I'll do it, Jeffrey said, his voice steady. I won't let you down. Cray George had been walking a tightrope between loyalty and betrayal for too long. Now, with Dana gone and John out of the picture, he had a chance to rebuild. Cray, Angel said softly when they met in the IT control room, I need someone I can trust to oversee the tech department. Someone who knows where the bodies are buried and who wants to do the right thing. Cray's eyes met hers, filled with uncertainty. After everything I've done, why would you trust me? Because, Angel said gently, you've already proven you're willing to make things right. Cray's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I won't screw this up. While new leadership was bringing stability to Will Howard Hospital, the echoes of betrayal and corruption still whispered through the hallways. Dana Johnson may have been gone, but ambition didn't vanish so easily. Rumors swirled that she was aligning herself with another healthcare system, ready to strike back when the time was right. And though Alexander Reid had been banished, whispers of his connections in the healthcare industry hinted that he wasn't done seeking revenge. As Angel, Jeffrey, and Cray worked to restore order, they knew one thing for certain. Peace was fragile, and in the world of hospital politics, old ghosts never stayed buried for long. Foreshadowing the future. The future of Will Howard Hospital was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the next battle was only a heartbeat away. Epilogue. What lies ahead? Months had passed since the chaos that had engulfed Will Howard Hospital. The corridors echoed with a sense of cautious optimism, but beneath the surface, the scars of the past lingered. Angel McWilliams had secured her place at the top, but power came with a price. As the new CEO, she had brought stability, but the weight of maintaining that control was heavier than she ever imagined. Success is never permanent, Angel murmured, as she stood in her glass-walled office overlooking the city of Shreveport. You have to fight for it every day. She had won the battle, but Angel knew that shadows lurked in every corner of the healthcare world, and those shadows had names. Jeffery McDaniels had found redemption and purpose in his new role as Director of Operations. He had restored faith among the staff and worked tirelessly to undo the damage Alexander Reid had inflicted. But Jeffrey was no longer naive. Things are better now, Jeffrey said to Marcus Whitman, who had stayed in contact to ensure the transition remained smooth. But I know how quickly things can change. Marcus nodded. You've done good work, Jeff, but you're right. Keep your eyes open. Jeffrey had made a promise to protect the hospital, and he intended to keep it. Cray George had been given a second chance, and he was determined not to squander it. Everything's running smoothly, Cray reported to Angel during their weekly check-in. We've corrected the glitches, and the system is stable. Angel's gaze was steady. Good, but stay vigilant, Cray. We can't afford any surprises. Cray nodded, his expression serious. He had been part of the chaos once, never again. But while Will Howard Hospital was healing, the past refused to stay buried. Dana Johnson had disappeared from the spotlight, but whispers suggested she was aligning herself with another powerful healthcare network, ready to strike when the moment was right. And Alexander Reid. His departure had been swift, but his influence still lingered. Alexander doesn't just disappear, Jeffrey murmured to Cray one evening after a late shift. He's out there, waiting. Cray's jaw tightened. Then we need to be ready. As Will Howard Hospital moved forward, the echoes of the past remained. Beneath the surface of progress and stability, danger was lurking, and sooner or later, it would rise again,